I'm going to be trying something new with this review. I'm going to start by reading quotes of reviews about this book that I really enjoyed. Apparently, the dark places of your mind are filled with social commentary. Loads and loads of social commentary. Who knew, right? Kind of gets old when you halt the story just to go on some long sociology lesson on class systems. Bet Karl Marx would get an orgasm from this book, though. Social commentary been used to death aside, I have to say I equal parts like and dislike this book. Really have no strong feelings for it, to be honest. Probably going to dress up all the quotes all with the cute Canva app, because hey, that's what they're there for, right? And I think this all comes from the same Goodreads review by Sade, if you want to check them out. But alright, Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas Litzow. This is going to be a full, in-depth, but spoiler-free review. And the first thing I want to mention, first and foremost, before you devote too much time to this book, to this video, is that this book is not for everyone. And I'm not even talking about the fact that this book displays depression and suicidality, which it does that too. But what I mean by like not everyone should read this book is that this book will show you and not tell you, literally paint a picture in your mind's eye of full-on sexual assault of a minor at that. Like, it is horrific, graphic scenes that he honestly shows so well when he uses so much exposition for so many other parts of his book. Like, it's kind of an interesting thing to compare and contrast. So really, this is not a book I recommend for everyone. It is not a book I think everyone should read, and you need to be aware of these things if you decide to. It's something you want to continue with. But if you can get past all that and are still interested, I do want to start with this review with what you hear about the most from other reviews, I think, and that's the production quality of this book. I started by listening to it, and I have to say the audiobook version is just as high quality as the hardback version. He hired an excellent voice actor. I don't know who it was, but the way he was able to pronounce this made-up language and give life to these characters' voices, you cannot tell it's self-published at all whatsoever. This is like higher than a lot of audiobooks I've seen come from the big name publishers. So what you hear about him putting money and effort into these books is 100% on point. And if you're looking for the audiobook, I did find it on the Barnes & Noble's audiobook app, and I really enjoyed using that app, and I do see them hopefully coming up and being a big competitor to Audible here in the next few years. But that quality is just really talking about the audiobook version. I haven't even mentioned the hardback, which I was surprised with by my wife. Like, I've always said that even if I hated this book, I was going to buy this book for its cover. Like, it literally has one of my favorite covers of all time, and literally is an art piece by itself. And funny story is, I was actually going to buy this for myself as a present for after I completed my big test I was taking, where I literally didn't go outside for like a month and it looked like this. But when I added it to my Amazon cart, I saw it next to all the baby items that we have to buy for our first child coming in July. And I begrudgingly removed it from my cart after seeing all those expenses. And then I got home after taking my test, and my wife had this sitting on the table for me. She had already bought it for me as a gift. So I was very excited about that. And I'd heard good things about the production quality of this hardback from other booktubers. And then when you go to his website, it's a true masterpiece. But I was concerned because some of the pictures of this book on Amazon, they don't look just like the mock-up that's on his page. Like on his website, you see kind of like the frayed edges, and you see the book cover in like an unrealistically clear version. So I was really concerned that this book, when I got it, wasn't going to live up to what I was seeing on the website. And in some ways, I'm correct. It doesn't have the frayed edges, but that's nothing. Like, it doesn't even matter. Because in addition to having such an excellent cover jacket, he has printed he has printed the artwork on the front page as well. And then as far as the difference in the way the cover looks on in person versus on his website, I think it has to do with the fact that on the website the blacks looked like Fooligan black, like black, whereas this almost looks like worn down and like brownish in color. But it is beautiful in person. If you're concerned about it not looking like it does on the website, don't be. And then the other thing I want to point out is that he adds so much artwork to this book. And then in the back, he has 100 pages or so of extras and poems and art, just masterful art pieces in this thing. It's truly incredible what an independent author did. He delivered a book of higher quality than most of the mainstream publishers do. But now that we've discussed the production value, which is probably the number one thing you hear said about this book from like universally from everyone, I do want to address another reason that like something that made me hesitant to start this book. And that was the fact that it was based off of a video game when it was originally written. And since then they've got nothing, they've broken ties, they've got nothing to do with each other. It's not in the Enderal world, it's in its own, I think it's like the 11th cycle or something like that. But it did concern me that this was based off a video game. I thought, would I be missing aspects of this story? Would I enjoy it not having lived through this in like a gameplay action? And honestly, after reading reviews of other people that have read this book that have played the game, I think not playing the game actually lets you enjoy the story more. Like a lot of people that played the game weren't as happy with this book as I was. So if that's the only thing keeping you back from purchasing this book, don't let it. So the real question is this book as good as its cover? And the answer is confusing. Yes, but no. I liked this book as much as I liked its covers, but the book itself is not as good as its cover. Anyone can take a look at this cover and be like, wow, that thing's fantastic. But not everyone can read the writing and say, hey, this is a high quality, like this author has, or how do I say it? This writing is very good. I enjoyed this book a ton. So even though this is one of my favorite books, this might go down as one of my favorite books of all time, I do not think it is one of the best books of all time. And trust me, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why, as well as go into what I don't like about this book. But first, I want to give you my short summary of this book. It's a story about an ex-mercenary being recruited by some super rich dude's wife to save him from a supernatural coma he's fallen into. And while he goes on this journey to save this man, the mercenary has to struggle with his own past and inner demons to save him. And I quickly want to go over a few things that I really enjoyed about this book. And the first thing I want to talk about is the setting. It is set in an archipelago, a cluster of little islands that seems to be inspired by the Polynesian culture. The next thing I really enjoyed was the languages in this book. It sounds like Nick worked with a linguist to come up with this language. And I will say with a caveat, like a small side note, that I enjoyed this language in the audiobook format. When I was kind of exploring the hardback edition and seeing the language written out, don't enjoy it nearly as much. I think it could be super confusing, and because it's inspired by Polynesian languages, they're all a huge mouthful, almost unpronounceable. So I think when I was looking at it written, it didn't do it justice the way it did in the audiobook. The next thing I really liked was dreamwalking. I've seen dreamwalking in several books, but this one has got to go down as one of my favorites. And the last thing I'll mention that I really enjoyed about this book was the magic system. It was a really soft magic system that went really hard. It just worked very well for this book. And with those good things being said, I do want to go into some of the issues with this book, because there are big ones that might be deal breakers for some readers. And almost all of these issues really come up in the beginning. The dialogue is rough at first. The immersion process into this really great world is very slow and difficult to fully be immersed into this world. And then, like the negative reviews at the beginning of this review have mentioned, The author goes into these long, drawn out social commentaries about political ideologies and essentially sounds like a sociology class. It sounds less like two people talking than it does a freshman philosophy major trying to earn his doctorate degree. If you've read Terry Goodkind's The Sword of Truth series, Terry Goodkind's later books where he preaches his philosophies, it's just like that. Maybe a little bit worse, and on the other opposite end of the spectrum. And when reading all the reviews about this book, I think these expositions are honestly what most people talk about. People who don't necessarily agree with the ideologies end up not really liking the book, and people who agree with his ideology, with the ideology spurted during these expositions, tend to think these the social commentary is groundbreaking revelations, and it is what really, I think, raises this book so highly for a lot of people. He'll literally go on for pages with anti-capitalism ideologies about the evils of the rich, the romanticization and glorification of nihilistic mindsets, and huge monologues of social injustices. My take on this writing in general is that it's typically super annoying, and almost every single book that has it could be better if they had shown all this and not told all this. If they had led to the reader to making these conclusions for themselves, rather than just outright telling us all this information. When you're trying to sell something, you don't tell them, you lead them to the conclusion. You make them think it was their own idea. It's hard to argue against yourself. So typically, books with this, I think, can be better. But for this book in particular, I think this writing style, this social commentary, really works and adds to the story and helps the immersion into this world and this really unique character's mindset. If I was to play devil's advocate, I could say that a better writer probably could have done all this without all the social commentary. And while that argument exists, I think Nicholas was able to write this book in a way that really worked and that I was able to enjoy thoroughly from beginning to finish. And it looks like the majority of people who read the book feel the same way. I don't think it really affected the quality of this book other than a really rough start when you jump into the archipelago. But I really empathize with people who couldn't get past this, because the beginning is the most challenging part to read already. And this is all thrown in while you're trying to adjust to a new world and culture and civilization. But as the story progresses, this book really truly becomes something great. And for those of you that don't agree with these big old long ramblings of ideologies that you may not prescribe to, the funny part about people that agree with these big old long rants, enjoying the story and agreeing with the sentiment so much, is that when you look at the book itself, it almost provides evidence against all the social commentary in the book. It would be like Karl Marx writing a book whose characters and heroes are communists, but the book shows the evils and horror that communism brings, and then is actually saved by someone of a different ideology altogether. The story, plot, and revelations that come through the book Dreams of the Dying almost directly contradict a lot of the social commentary we see in the book, and sometimes provides evidence to why these mindsets are so pathological to our mindsets. It shows the pathology played out through the story. And since I brought up the pathological mindsets of these characters, of our heroes, I do want to kind of circle that back to why I don't think everyone should read this book. As a lover of fantasy and someone who gets lost into characters and connect with those characters that I read that are really fleshed out and real, it was so interesting to go on this journey with someone who exudes such a pathological mindset. But for people like me that do get lost in character, or goes beyond me and starts relating to and romanticizing or emulating the thoughts of these characters, this book can take a real toll on your mindset and mental health. And that's in addition to the traumatic scenes of sexual violence, self-harm, and depression. And while all this social commentary is told and not shown, all these very explicit scenes are very well shown and not just told. So anyone who struggles with any of this should probably stay far away from this book. So in conclusion, this book had things I loved about it, things I hated about it, but honestly, was just a really good freaking book. It gets a high 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm definitely going to reread this book before I read the second book in the series, which is hopefully coming out pretty soon. But that wraps this review up, guys. So make sure you like and subscribe to get notified when the next video drops. And until next time, I hope you're out there exploring cool new stories and reading cool new worlds, and I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.